Masakani. I now welcome your questions. Thank you.
Madam Premier, Brian Darby from VSD. Housing has been a major issue in many Premier speeches in the past. It seems to have been left out. I think real estate might be a better word. Is there an issue that government is thinking of continuing in its approach that will make the real estate industry a little bit more competent than it is at the moment?
Mr. Darby, the issue of housing, if you're talking about funding, is normally dealt with through the budget. But what we did talk about is the platform for action with the consultative process that the Minister for National Security has engaged in and certainly initiated tremendous dialogue with stakeholders about. And it's really looking at whether it is time to revisit not just the moratorium, but what we can do where there are Bermudians who are married to non-Bermudians, should that moratorium be lifted. And I think you'll recall that he did in a fairly lengthy ministerial statement some months ago. He invited stakeholders to participate. They have, and now as part of the thinking and the input, the deliberations will come forward to the House in due course. But it's really about one, seeking to get greater equity and also to provide some stimulus, and also look at, and it's hand in hand with when we talk about more red carpet, less red tape, and when we talk about the fact that government has to provide an enabling environment and to encourage job makers and provide them with incentives where they actually provide jobs, real jobs for Bermudians. You also are looking at what can you do to encourage them to take a stake and invest in Bermuda. And sometimes it's as simple, from the discussions we've been having around the tables of the boardrooms and caucus rooms and in the Cabinet office with stakeholders, these are issues that certainly are raised periodically. And that's what the Minister and the government on his behalf is seeking to further.
Madam Premier, two questions, one strategic, one detailed. You spoke of developing the waterfronts in combination of cooperation with Hamilton and Legal Trust. Do you see this as a public-private partnership?
Very much so. About, I think, 2 weeks ago, the learned Minister, the Deputy Premier at the time, was representing the country at the Conservative Government Conference, Party Conference. But certainly one of the issues that we see as important is to have, I think, a centerpiece development. And certainly with regard to the corporation, the government, and the private sectors, we see that area as an area that is ripe for transformation, and it's an area which is also ripe for having greater engagement, public-private sector. And I think that certainly the corporation has done some work in terms of some of the RFPs, but we've had a couple of meetings already, a MOS, quite a large group of various ministers, corporation and private sector, but that very much is seen as a public-private partnership, and a steering group has been struck. And I believe over the next week or so, there's going to be a meeting as we chart the way forward.
For a second question, it's about detail this time. Will the government establish or create a process for tracking and counting Bermuda's unemployed? It's been a vexing issue all through the last 2 years.
Mr. Bercho, I think overall it's been a vexing issue even for those in government. What we're seeking to do is to provide the necessary support to our Department of Statistics. We ask and expect a lot from them. They are coming out with further detailed analysis as a result of the census, and we're also looking at what we can do, because in terms of talking to Madam Director, she said that there certainly is the ability to do mini censuses. It has a cost, but in terms of getting our financial data and information about labor market statistics, that's key for us going forward. So certainly with the Ministry of the Cabinet Office, in terms of Department of Statistics, falls under that, and also with the Ministry of ETI, Economy, Trade and Industry, and the Department of Labor. Minister Wilson, the former minister, immediately past Minister of ETI, has certainly set in motion the steps for a one-stop career center. You noted also from the from the throne speech that there's going to be the ability to link between those who are in financial assistance. They will automatically become clients clients of the One Stop Career Center. We think this will all help in conjunction with the Statistics Department to provide us with better tracking and better data, because you make better policies when you have the data. And sometimes we're operating in arrears, so you're having to hypothesize as opposed to having the specific data. So the short answer, after I've taken a lot of words, is yes. Okay. Yes.
On page 19 of the points, which you talk about the governance, you mentioned some mistakes that have been made. The government regrets those mistakes. The speech said, which mistakes does the government regret?
The mistakes that we talked about in ample detail with the Auditor General's responses. I think I was clear then and gave chapter and verse and said that we were setting in motion some corrective action. Yeah.
Premier, I have a few questions. The first is, how many jobs do you expect will be created by the National Jobs Stimulus Plan?
I think we haven't figured out in terms of the numbers. We just know that the part of the issue is to create an enabling environment, and certainly with the job stimulus plan within the government, even though government isn't the procurer of jobs, we certainly have the numbers with regard to TriStar, the Tri holdings. We also have with regard to Minister Blakeney under the his ministry with regard to what's happening in Dockyard. So we can quantify those that are within the government remit. We can't give you specifics at this stage, because you'll see when people make the application for the job maker incentives, they provide business plans and they also give the projections as to the number of Bermudians. So we can track that and also quantify that, but off the top of my head, because some of them haven't as yet applied, I can't give you chapter and verse.
And when will the Cisco program actually begin?
I know that it is in train in terms of the discussions, and that they are keen to provide and set up and provide a framework in Bermuda with regard to their training. I think it's probably going to be the latter part, probably the second or third quarter. But there have been discussions under the former minister, Nalitha Butterfield, and it's being taken forward under the new minister.
Your last throne speech talked about a post-recessionary climate. Now you fully acknowledge it's a crisis we're in. I guess my question is, did you misjudge the economic cycle at the time?
No, I think what you're finding is that the recession, because some of the effects of the stimulus packages worldwide have had some challenges, and in fact you've had the minister, the prime minister in Greece is fighting for his life with regard to the referendum, saying won't there be a referendum, said there'll be a referendum, then now there's not, and it's into the whole Eurozone. I think a very flawed and I suppose superficial analysis would say that you could with predictive certainty assess the actual specifics of the length and duration of the recession. And even when you come out of a recession, you're still going to have a loss of human capital, because the environment as we know it has changed.
But it wasn't a post-recessionary climate.
Anything that is post-recessionary, I think that's how long is a piece of string, really. I think I'm not going to do semantics with you, really.
One more question. 1 second. Anybody else? Last question?
Last.
Any media have not asked questions? Last question?
I can ask one in the interim.
Yeah.
Are we to take it from page 6 of the speech that land licenses for spouses of Bermudians, are they going to be abolished?
That's certainly the intent, to look at that and to confirm that. That's certainly the minister's information thus far, and as a result of his, I suppose, the input that he's received, he'll certainly make a recommendation. Cabinet is certainly going to always be the final arbiter, but that's certainly an issue that was raised in Cabinet, in caucus, in CC, and it's something that the considered view is that it's time to revisit that.
Final one. Premier, the speech talks about, you said the government does not condone discrimination based on employment or housing, I think, in terms of sexual orientation. And then it says we will examine whether it is feasible to introduce an equality act. The language sounds as if you might be making room to back away from the commitment that you made in your government has made anyway. What is the commitment of the government with regard to prohibiting sexual orientation discrimination?
To looking at where we can correct inequalities, whether it's in terms of discrimination in terms of age or whether it's in terms of sexual orientation. What the government is saying in the throne speech is what the intent is over this parliamentary session. And our view is that we shouldn't behave like sometimes you have auditors generals in other countries where they say it's the gotcha mentality, but we don't feel that we should, even in any pre-election, be secret about those things that we are thinking about, and then, by the way, first day after another election where the government has won, that, oh, by the way, now we're changing sexual orientation laws and we're going to be liberal. We want you to know that this government is a government that is concerned about the people, not just people who look like us, not just people who behave like us, not just people who are our age. So we're signaling our interest in correcting anomalies and discriminatory provisions. And that's what we're saying we're doing. Looking at that and assessing it so the people know that they're not buying a pig in a poke. We're not being secretive about the need to deal with inequalities and discrimination, including sexual orientation discrimination. Now, if you're asking me, am I going to, as you did in your first question where you wanted me to project how many jobs are going to be created as a result of businesses that are coming in, I can't tell you with exact specificity as to that it's going to be done on the first day of the budget. No, but I am letting you know on behalf of this country and this government that we're interested in dealing with people who have been discriminated against.
Madam Premier, the government has in the past suggested that it would be looking at gaming as a source of revenue, and at the earliest sign of opposition, it has retracted. How serious is government about this, or pursuing that option this time?
The government has, through the relevant minister, has gone out and talked to the people. You know that under the National Tourism Plan, there was engagement with the people. One of the recommendations was to assess, because people seemed mixed. There's always a group who say yay or nay, and people have been mixed. So one option is to look at having a referendum, and it isn't something which is smoke and mirrors. We're serious about looking at that, because in our view, and from a government point of view, part of governing isn't just taking this safe, tried and true road. You've got to be prepared to be anticipatory, you've got to be prepared to be a trailblazer, and you've got to also look at, we're in an economic downturn where you have to renew. You should be prepared to entertain those ideas of possibilities, whether it's gaming, whether it is the national lotteries. You put it all and look at the waterfront, and then you decide what is feasible, what's the time frame, and how do we make it happen. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Madam Premier.